All right, so I've titled this deck in the stream title this morning, Hipster Ponza. This is not your daddy's Ponza deck, chat. So this deck's leveraging a bunch of brand new cards. We have Unmarked Grave here, which is Entomb for a non-legendary card for 2 mana. We have Persist, which is Reanimate, minus with the minus counter for a non-legendary creature for 2 mana. And then we also have Footsteps to the Goryo here that says return target creature card from graveyard to the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So we've got Ashen Rider that when it enters or dies, it exiles any permanent. And we've got Woodfall Primus. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent, and it has Persist. So there's a little bit of anti-synergy with Woodfall Primus and the card Persist, but Woodfall Primus works especially well with Footsteps of the Goryo. So the basic idea is you put one of these fat mons in our graveyard, and then you bring it back with Persist or Footsteps or a copy of Unburial Rites here, and then you start killing their lands. And one of the things that's really nice about this as a Ponza deck is that all of our cards, Ashen Rider, Woodfall Primus, and Vindicate here, that we can use to kill lands to make our opponents be off-tempo and get behind, also double up as kill other random permanents. So we're not just locked into killing our opponent's lands. There are also utility cards if killing our opponent's lands aren't good. We also have a couple copies of Archon of Cruelty here, another fantastic card out of the MH2 set release that lets us play to the board and gain life a bit in the event that we're playing in something aggressive and we want to stabilize the board a bit. So our actual nut draws involve Insolent Neonate here. Faithless Looting is no longer legal, so you can Neonate Ashen Rider or Woodfall Primus or Archon into the graveyard on 1, and then you can persist it back on turn 2 and start Stone Raining your opponent as early as the second turn of the game. We've got Faithless Salvaging here, which lets us discard and then draw twice because it rebounds. Something worth noting with Faithless Salvaging here too is that not only is this an enabler for getting our cards in the graveyard, but this card also just reads draw 2 in certain situations in the late game. So you like cast this, play with an empty hand, you play the card you cast, then on your next upkeep, it rebounds and draws another card for you. So neat flexibility on this. Definitely not strictly worse Faithless Looting, but a little bit different. And then you see I've got one copy of Nahiri in the main, as well as another copy of more copies of Nahiri in the sideboard. And she's really sweet in this archetype, I think. Not only does she provide us a discard outlet, but she answers cards like Rest in Peace and Grafdigger's Cage and Leyline of the Void with her down tick, as well as just playing to the board. And then her -8 is another way to like get these fatties out of our deck and do something sweet with them. So she really kind of ties the room together, I think. So let's go ahead and dive on into some matches here with this and see how it goes. Hey, Fox, I'd be happy to get that modern deck queued up. Do you want that one played tomorrow morning or on a particular day? Yes, you are allowed to submit a modern deck for Shillionaire Punishing if you'd like. Just use the form on the site and indicate that's what it's for. Midnights, thanks for the quarter of a year. I think it'll ever be worth it to have my favorite historic decks in paper. It depends on if you can play historic in paper. I think if you and the people that play at your local game store told your local game store owner that you wanted to play historic for F&M or whatever, that they definitely host it. Like they just want people playing Magic. And honestly, a lot of game store owners would probably be excited for people to want to play Historic because it gives them a reason to sell cards that aren't playable in other formats but are playable in Historic. I didn't see the specific build that Andre Mengucci was playing, but a lot of people have worked on Black White Ephemerate. That was one of the decks we played on the very first day I was back to doing Modern stuff. You scroll back on the Modern playlist on my YouTube channel, you'll find it there. A lot of different directions you can build that archetype in for sure. Any day should work. Sounds good. I don't have anything teed up for tomorrow, so it should be tomorrow morning, I believe. Unless I'm forgetting something. Yeah, so the most recent unset, I feel like, wasn't really an unset like the older unsets were unset so much as it was a like Modern Horizons 2 in a way was very similar to the most recent unset in that they just printed a bunch of designs in the unset that they like normally wouldn't want to print into normal Magic sets. Do you want a wireless or wired connection? Ideally, I want it to be able to plug in. I want it to be able to be functional if I forget to charge it. Okay, Luris deck. I think this is a mulligan, huh? Doesn't do a whole lot. Seems fine. I'm gonna bottom the Unmarked Grave. I guess the Unmarked Grave could potentially find us an Unburial Rites. It's kind of slow though. I could just bottom one of the fatties here, but Salvaging does rummage twice. I'm gonna bottom the Unmarked Grave. See how this goes. Esper, Sentinel, Silent Clearing, Luris. Oh, they could be the Hammer Time deck that we played the other day. That deck's really good. Had a lot of turn 3 kills. This card's super powerful. Yup. Opponent's about to draw some cards, chat. We are now a mill deck. I think this is probably a situation where I would say I think we want to reanimate Archon more than anything. But we're gonna get to get both of them in the bin. Discard spell, not particularly exciting. Thorn has plenty of mana, and we need to play to the board. Yikes. Well, we'll take the Pure Steel Paladin, because that's what lets them equip their thing next turn. What does Art and Vindicate supposed to look like? So, for people that are, for the Magic Zoomers in the audience, during OG Magic lore, during Odyssey, Apocalypse, not Odyssey, Apocalypse, Nemesis, stuff like that, there was a flying spaceship Weatherlight thing that was magically powered. Hey, Distinction, thanks for the 26 months. We've come full circle with the spreadsheet magic. Yes, yeah, this is definitely the Weatherlight getting busted. There are, as I should have included that in the deck tag, there are 400,000, approximately, I'm rounding down, different various trash tier expensive creatures you could put into this deck that will give you small advantages in certain spots. Feel free to put whichever trash tier expensive creatures you want to be able to tutor with Unmarked Grave into your deck that you would like. I won't judge you. I have put the ones in here that I have included in my deck. I'm not sure if Why Not Grizzlebrand is a serious question, but just to be clear, these are both non-legendary. Even if we wanted something that didn't destroy lands, these are both non-legendary. So yeah, so play your favorite trash tier creatures. I'm gonna elect not to play your trash tier creatures. I'm gonna instead play the trash tier creatures that I have registered. These are the ones I prefer. Vindicate's probably too slow here. Bring in these Prismatic Endings and Fatal Pushes and Wear Tears. Cut the discard spells. I'm gonna bring in my Massacre Boy here. I don't expect that much graveyard out of them. I'm gonna leave the extra Nahiris on the board. Prismatic Ending and Wear Tear handle random graveyard hate too. Honestly, I like the designs on Unmarked Grave and Persist a lot, and they even did us the solid on like printing Archon of Cruelty as a powerful but not overbearing thing like Griselbrand to reanimate. Griselbrand is a fantastic example of the way larger card pools actually make less things playable in older formats. So Reanimator in Legacy is a great example of that, right? Before Griselbrand existed in Legacy, what you're reanimating was an interesting question. Now, what you're reanimating is generally speaking worse than Griselbrand, so you should just reanimate Griselbrand. There's obviously still like some utility in like things like Sire of Insanity on occasion, but generally Griselbrand's the correct thing to bring back. It's like 15 mana Emrakul, right? 15 mana Emrakul greatly reduces diversity because it's the best thing to sneak attack or show and tell into play. It gets rid of what could be an interesting deck building question and just replaces it with an easy answer. So Griselbrand isn't always a turn 1 combo kill. There are definitely decks that turn 1 combo kill with Griselbrand, but what's the word that I'm searching for? They don't. That isn't the only option. Vindicate be too powerful for Historic. I think cards that destroy. I think you're asking the wrong question. And this is something we've talked about before. The question should not be, is this too strong for Historic? The question should be, does adding this to Historic add value to the format? Remember, if you're a mod dealing with unban requests, make sure you copy their unban request if you deny it to their user history, so I can go back and reference it later. You are very good about that, Coons. That was just a general note because you mentioned it, which means other mods are going to look it up. We can beat Tormod's Crypt. Oh, I guess their hand's empty. If I murder this Pure Steel Paladin. Did I just Unmarked Grave and like force the Tormod's Crypt? I think so. Is Griselbrand doing things in Modern now? It's not. So Modern doesn't have good reanimation tools. That's why my comparison for Griselbrand reducing deck diversity was specifically targeted towards Legacy, where there are in fact good reanimation tools. Lala the Witch, thanks for the 28 months. It's a long time. Welcome back. Good morning. Good morning. I think K-Command is worse than the other cards I'm already playing, EGH. Especially in a world where Urza Saga is a card that we care about. Wear Tear is very good, because Wear Tear is 1 mana destroy Urza Saga. I mean, do you really need to play special cards to make drawing? Do you really need to play special cards to make drawing 7 cards for 7 life good? Would be my question to you. Do you need to, does that require work? I think I'm pretty confident the answer is no, right? We're gonna die to a hammer with Sigarda's Aid chip. I just don't understand how anybody can play, like, I don't understand how anybody can play any amount of games against the current Jeskai control like an Historic and come to the conclusion that they think the format would be better with Counterspell in it. Like, where are you at in your life that that's a decision that you're making? Like, I can't. But Jeff, Counterspell is less offensive than Memory Lapse some of the time. Yeah, sure, that's true, but they both suck. It's the trick to spotting the Jeskai control players. That's probably fair. They're telling on themselves. You prefer Mishra's Bauble over Memnite? No, probably not, because you're a Springleaf Drum deck. So you want Memnite. You want Memnite for Springleaf Drum. You also just need extra miscellaneous bodies to put hammers on. I didn't tell you, Matt. Jacob must have been watching someone golf in a YouTube video. And he asked me if we could get golf clubs. And I was like, well, Mario Golf is coming out for the Switch. Is that fine? So he wants to Mario Golf now. Mono Black Aggro is very good, yes. It's one of the few decks that can back up Thoughtseize with a very quick clock. Shin Saku, thanks for the 52 months. Welcome back. Morning, good morning. So this hand has no way to get the fatties that we've drawn into the bin. Pretty easy mulligan here. No black mana. We did lose as you blinked. Okay, this hand does the thing, chat. No, wait. Almost put the wrong one back. As Brutality still played in Reanimator decks. I didn't have room for it in this configuration now. I also don't think Brutality is that good in this format at the moment. One of the things that I'm actually not a huge fan of in the format. I've enjoyed Modern in general since being back, but one thing that I think is a net negative for the format is that traditional burn is no longer a deck in Modern. So traditional burn has been completely replaced by these prowess-based decks that are playing busted cards like Manamorphose and Mishra's Bubble, because you can't really blame them, play the messed up magic cards. Yeah, I think the traditional burn in Modern, I've always been a huge fan of it, even as someone that doesn't play it, because I think it does very honest things. My opponent has conceded to turn 2 Persist on Archon. Good chat, good chat. Don't really know what our opponent's doing. I think in the dark, I'm going to bring in 4 ways to kill pieces of Graveyard Hate. I'm going to board out 4 Thoughtseize. I'm going to click Submit. My opponent's going to Nahiri in the dark, maybe. I can see that being an okay play. I mean, to be fair, decks like what we're playing tend to kind of generate polarized gameplay like this. It's one of the reasons why I personally gravitate towards decks like Kiki Cord that are more mid-rangey. So, like, you have the first match where we, like, effectively flopped around and did nothing, but then when we do our thing is so powerful, it wins the game. Thanks for the 25 months, MB. Welcome back. Mulligan this. It's probably fine. It's not super fast, but they can't all be that fast. That's hilarious, Masterbeard. The person who was upset that I would call out Primeval Titan in Modern has a podcast about Primeval Titan. Man, you actually just can't make this shit up. That's super funny. I have to know how many episodes of Primetime Podcast are there. Well, I mean, it's been a problematic child in the format for a long time, so I have to imagine there's been... Oh, our opponent is a fellow Faithless Salvaging connoisseur. Profane Tutor, huh? All right, fair. We deserve that. So some of the fake news media out there will articulate that my opponent's deck killed me on the 3rd turn of the game. But those people would be liars. My opponent has taken 3 turns, and I've taken 2 turns, and very clearly 3 plus 2 is 5. This is a math problem even my 6-year-old can do. And this is the 5th turn of the game on which I have conceded. So don't let the fake news get to you, chat. That was not a turn 3 kill. That was a turn 5 kill. Okay, so I'm sideboarded incorrectly. We'll board in these. We're going to cut the wear tears and the prismatic endings. Honestly, this is probably a Sire of Insanity matchup, huh? It's like ditch your stuff. Archon seems a little slow. Might be alright to keep all these Vindicates just in case they have permanent base Graveyard Hate. I'd say I have Thoughtseize to tag Graveyard Hate too. This hand just isn't good enough, right? I feel like I basically need to do something on turn 2 or turn 3. Are these the only 2 lands that don't make black mana in my deck? Two out of 3. 18 black sources. 18 black sources. So I don't even think it's about money when modern players complain about new busted cards. I think it's just the very human fear of change, right? Where people are worried that the thing that they enjoy is going to change, or it is changing and they see it changing, so they want to go back to what it was previously. Mueller, thank you for the sub gifties. Good morning. I could Thoughtseize myself here. I think that's wrong. I think the odds of them having nothing here are pretty low. Wow. Their deck is way sweeter than ours. So they're an Indomitable Creativity Goryo's Vengeance deck. That's sick. Yeah, but like, chat, they have any counterspell or grave or surgical extraction, then I'm just left on nothing? For the record, Velocimist Time Warp turns was very successful last weekend. I mean, it's very easy to put this deck list together. It's like Indomitable Creativity, Goryo's Vengeance, things that loot, etc. It's not complicated. It's neat. I haven't seen this combination of cards before, but... And this is one of my concerns about this deck, is when you get going kind of late like this, it's like, well, is what we're doing good enough? Like, are these creatures that destroy lands are like really good on the first or second turn of the game, but like you bring them back on a turn like this and like killing their land didn't really matter. And like now I have a 4/4, and a 4/4 is not very good. The arguments just take them off of black. No, I don't think so. They're an Indomitable Creativity deck, so attacking their red sources, I think, is ideal. Oh shit! Did I board out the Unburial Rites? No, I didn't. Where is it? Where are you, Unburial Rites? It was hiding. It was hiding here above the Unmarked Graves, chat. We have a slow-ish clock here. And that I feel like the question that I really want to answer with this deck, or think about at the very least, is how often is what we're doing worse than just doing other things like similar to what our current opponent's doing? Like how often is putting these things into play worse than just like putting Archons into play or putting Emmerquills into play? Like we're jumping through hoops to like execute this strategy, but so far our strategies felt a little They just demonic tutored, right? Okay. Like here, for example, I don't really want to even do this, right? I'd much rather have an Archon in play to close the game faster. And they tutored and then didn't do anything. So what did they find? Yep, there's that Dwarven Mine. And in Modern, all of your red fetches find Dwarven Mine, which is really powerful. So I assume they're going to put an Emrakul into play here. Although I guess putting Emrakul into play isn't very good because I have Archon of Cruelty. Oh, they could put Emrakul into play off of the treasure, and then Dwarf insulates them. Huh. None of these cards really help us, right? Well, I have an Unmarked Grave. I have Unburial Rites in my bin. Let's grab a Persist, I guess. Reveal cards to top of your library until you reveal a non-land card. Put the revealed cards. When you reveal a non-land card this way, deal. Okay. Okay, now that's funny. That's hilarious. Scheming Symmetry, Calibrated Blast you for 15. That's great. So far, our deck has had one example of our deck wasn't linear enough or interactive enough to stay alive. And the second match there was an example of we actually executed our game plan, but our game plan wasn't good enough to win the game. It's also worth noting that we wouldn't have died to Calibrated Blast there if we would have had an Archon of Cruelty in play instead of Ashen Rider, probably indicating that this destroying lands plan is probably worse than reanimating Archons. We're not playing all of the Archons. I think I'm keeping this. Any fatty turns into something pretty good. We're on the draw this game, yeah. I mean, to be fair, Burgle, they killed us in the other game with like Goryo's Vengeance Emrakul on turn 3, which is like pretty legitimately powerful. I think we're about to be warp worlded, chat. JK, LOL, not about to be warp worlded. Ready to Stone Arena nerd, chat? That one, please. Boom goes the dynamite. Spook Frothy, thanks for the follow. Welcome to the channel this morning. All right, we've Stone Rained them twice. This will be a good sampling for is what we're trying to do good enough? Because we did exactly what our deck wants to do this game. Can it put up a W? Okay, Thoughtseize. Yep. Yep. Well, shoot. Maybe their Warp World will brick. I don't know that it really fixes our problems. That sounds pretty shitty too, Pomoyne. Like, our core problem seems to be that just, like, destroying lands isn't very good. Ooh. And again, like, salvaging with Archon. Archon sounds pretty appealing. The opponent's archetype does brick a lot. We played their deck and, like, we cascaded a bunch and it just didn't matter. We've hit them for enough damage now that they can't fetch shock for their third land, and they can't put a shock land into play untaps. They have to draw a fetch or a basic here. Our opponent's cascading into a one-sided Warp World Burgle, but I don't expect that description to mean anything to you because you're not a dirty casual. Feel free to look up the card text. Our land destruction was good enough here. We killed the land on turn 2. We killed the land on turn 3. Seems good. So they're going to have Leyline of the Void post board. So I'm going to bring in Wear Tear. I'm bringing in Nahiri too. How interactive do I want to be? Probably not that interactive. Now let's cut this and do this. I have Vindicates to kill Leylines as well. It's one of the reasons why Vindicate's nice. It's like a Stone Rain like we saw it be that game, but it like also answers hate cards. Alright, this is a turn 3 thing, so could be slow. So the opponent's deck, for people that didn't see us flop around and fail with it last week, it cascades into a card that flips random cards out of their deck based on the number of permanents they control. So I have the elusive double Stone Rain turn 3 prepped. So we get to salvaging, and then we get to Footsteps of the Goryo, the Woodfall Primus, and kill 2 of their lands, assuming they don't flip something scary into play here. They could end up flipping something scary into play here. Alright, no whammy. No whammy. Just a Seasoned Pyromancer. We could beat Seasoned Boy, chat. Y'all ready to kill some lands, chat? I watched Jeff play this deck. The goal is to turn your lands into Shardless Agents. Big mood. That is definitely what we did when we played it. We turned our lands into Shardless Agents. Okay. So this comes back, it destroys a land, and then we have to sacrifice it end of turn, but it persists and destroys another land. Good night. And then next turn, we get to Unmarked Grave plus Persist and kill another land. I'm glad we got to have a match here where our deck got to do what it wanted to do. This is if you weren't quite sure what our deck was looking to execute, This is what our deck is looking to execute. To go ahead and do this, kill this colony garden. Thanks for the tier 3 extras. I appreciate that. For the 39 months, it's a long time. My opponent just did nothing. We killed 3 of their lands and they didn't have another one. You lose. Good day, sir. Nice, nice. On the scoreboard. Don't call it a comeback, chat, but our trek to a 3-2 uphill in the snow from the 0-2 start begins here now. I mean, to be fair, we only really needed 1 persist there, right? The Footsteps of the Goryo plus Woodfall Primus was a big part of why we won, because Footsteps let us kill 2 lands on the 3rd turn. This archetype was kind of a thing that we had tried before Persist and Unmarked Grave existed. Like, we'd done something similar with Footsteps and Woodfall back when Faithless Looting was still legal. This format, going from this format to historic is so weird, because like there's obviously things that like this format does that are like more busted than historic, but like historic has Faithless Looting and Brainstorm and other stuff that this format isn't allowed to have. No middle burrito emote. You just gotta be a small sea creature to get the middle burrito emote. Make that fatty burrito. is whale a good burrito ingredient, Lampton? I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about whale as a burrito ingredient. This is probably mulligan, right? Just Thoughtseize Vindicate. No way to get these in the bin or reanimate. This is a keep, I think. It needs a way to reanimate, but Unmarked Grave is kind of a way to reanimate. Maybe I'm supposed to keep the 3rd land. The Forbidden Shrimp Taco, something like that. All right, it's a race. Wellspring, Luris. Well, I need the burrito, but oh, thanks for the bits, good nuts. So, Faithless Looting largely wasn't banned because of Mana Monkey decks. Faithless Looting was removed because of things like Dredge and Hogak and other things like that. Mostly Dredge, I think. Need the burrito. Thanks for the bits, Crockett. Enjoy your long burrito emotes. Yeah, what Mike said. Opal and looting were very powerful, cheap enablers that caused lots of busted things to happen. All right. Even if we miss on a reanimate spell for next turn, we'll be able to vindicate something, which is nice. Jeff with the long con, he didn't start playing Moto because Modern was good. He wanted a bunch of us to send bits so we'd get middle burritos. Going on, Beetle. Good morning. Zeus, thanks for the 2 months. Welcome back. They're bolting me to make this bigger. Thanks. Rim again. Thanks for the 18 months. I appreciate the 1.5 years. Get some salvaging going on here. Okay, so this is awkward. So basic swamp is my only basic that Marsh Flats fetches. So I have to fetch shock to cast Vindicate here. Feels bad, man. Gonna be dead to a bolt next turn. Or a Snapcaster. Well, Vindicate was a card that just, like, didn't see much play, right? So, like, the fact that it dropped a bunch. So I don't think I can do animated emoticons for bit emotes. Just generic ones. But yeah, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Have a couple of meetings scheduled to talk with a couple of graphics people about redoing some of my channel overlay stuff. I think I want more cards that play to the board in a matchup like this. And again, I think this is kind of a matchup where our plan of killing lands actually isn't very good. I think we'd rather just like have things like Archon or Grave Titan, because like their cards are so cheap. It's difficult to kill their lands and have that be a real game plan. We're gonna do this. Board into Nahiri and some spot removal. Persist and Unmarked Grave, and we have Unburial Rites here as a reanimate tool as well. Sure. Interaction, way to put this in the bin. This finds an Unburial Rites. So I'm going to let their Surveil trigger resolve before they know I'm pushing their Dragon Rage Chandler, but I'm then going to push the Chandler before the Bauble resolves. This way, if they have a second Bauble, they can't Bauble and get another trigger off of it. Nice, nice. We're set for a turn 3 Ashen Rider here. Who do I like to play when I was playing Overwatch? Characters that didn't require me to aim particularly precisely. Winston. I actually wasn't a huge fan of Diva. I liked Winston. Kind of smashy characters. So 29 months, Suna, welcome back. Not surprising to see that go away there. So if my opponent is missing their second land, okay. So if we draw a Reanimate spell this turn, we get to take their only land away. We've seen any Storm? No, Storm and Tron have basically been non-existent. Well, I was going to Entomb and Unburial Rites, and then I drew Stone Rain, so... Get that one out of here. Okie-doke. Am I declining the rebound on Faithless Salvaging next turn? I might be. Yeah, I think we're just chilling. Is my opponent playing Magic? They are experiencing Magic. I wouldn't necessarily say that they're playing it. I think you could make the strong argument that Magic is playing them. Yikes. Fine, you know what? I don't get a graveyard, you don't get lands. It's only fair. It's only fair, opponent. Oh no! Oh no! Sag, gotta kill the monkey. Gotta kill the monkey. And again, just kind of like the core fundamental problem with trying to be a land destruction deck here. There's so many cheap get under you things in the format, right? Like that, aside from my opponent having a Nihil spell bomb, this game basically went according to plan for us, right? That is a Grave Titan in the center of my hand. Okay, we can find it in Tomb. And then persist something next turn. What commander decks are we playing today? I am not intending to run back any of the commander decks we've already played. There is a ton of different commander decks I would like to try, and we have a limited time with the format. So, what are we playing today? We're gonna play Krenko today, and we're gonna play Muldrotha today. Yep. So I'm gonna play the last match to see if we can get if we manage to win the last match, we get $5. So we'll try and play for $5. But this deck doesn't seem particularly good. The reanimation plan just of these cards that target lands just doesn't seem particularly competitive with how low to the ground a lot of the decks in this format are. I think if I wanted to play a reanimate shell similar to this, just playing a bunch of Archon of Cruelties and other better reanimate threats that aren't trying to like get your opponent is likely the better game plan. We're playing against Bob and Cheese. What is Bob and Cheese doing in the 1-3 bracket with us? He's playing Orphan Guard. Or is he playing a bad control deck? Is this a bad control deck? They could be playing Elementals too, I suppose. There's been an Elemental deck going around. We have a turn 2 friend. So definitely keep here on our end. If they're playing Elementals, Solitude is real sad for our deck. Big Sedge. Solitude, Big Sedge, chat. Kira is the Harbinger of Death. Nah, I think it looks like they're playing Elementals. Speaking of Harbingers. Voice of Resurgence. Thank you to the advice of watching some Twitch channels without chat makes them a lot more watchable. Yeah. Especially large chats that don't have sub-only mode on. They get kinda stanky. So I think with the Thoughtseize drawn, I'm supposed to Thoughtseize them here to try and hip check for Solitude before I put my thing into play. I'm gonna go ahead and take the Harbinger, because this could fish up Solitude. This card do? Turn target land from graveyard to the battlefield. Whenever a land you control is put into the graveyard, get a 5/3. Sure. Like this one to persist. So they sack a creature. We draw a card. They lose life. They discard a card. This card seems sweet. Seems very powerful. My opponent's going to cast Risen Reef, speaking of powerful. So powerful. This thing triggers whenever it attacks, too. Just like, hey, you, sack a thing, discard a card, I'll draw a card. Okay, and they missed a land on the Risen Reef, so let's go ahead and Stone Rain them here. Hear me, Yugi boy. Okay, so I feel like I'm pretty convinced that this game plan is bad. So I'm just going to board those out. I'm going to bring in the Grave Titan and the Massacre Wurm. Prismatic Ending and Fatal Push sound fine. I think I'd rather not have Thoughtseize. I'd rather just play to the board more. Bring in a Nahiri, click submit. That's the plan. Yeah, in a Reanimator deck that's not trying to do something cheesy like kill lands, Chancellor's probably fine. So if you miss the deck tech for this deck, the original intention of this submission was to try and reanimate a bunch of things that kills the opponent's lands, but that plan hasn't felt particularly good. Try reloading your arena, Mueller. Another reason to not depend on killing lands in this matchup. All right, so you just need to draw land plus persist, easy peasy. Would settle for running lands though. You don't pull up lands to win games, you do it to send a message. It's fair. Accurate, and fair. Just gonna go ahead and grab Unburial Rites here. Pass the turn. There's an Aether Vial the opponent has in play. Allows them to put creatures into play without paying their mana cost and at instant speed. We have like Risen Reef, use Vial. No plays. They must have a Solitude, right? So I definitely want to hit a land drop this turn. They could have like a Surgical Extraction or something too. I'm gonna go ahead and sack this and try and hit that land drop. Rip. This is at least something for us to discard to the Salvaging. Rebound next turn. Ornenberg. Yes, we'll take a look at the mechanics article for the new set after we're done with our league here. This is the last match, so 1 to 2 more games here, depending on how this goes. Yep. So, gonna shuffle our graveyard away here. I'm gonna go ahead and unmarked for an Archon. Hope to draw a Reanimate spell. This is permanent. Obviously should have played the land. I'm gonna go ahead and just move on to the next game though. Our game plan definitely, and this kind of feels like the issue a lot of the Reanimator decks have had in Historic as well. Our game plan just doesn't quite feel powerful enough compared to how badly we get hosed by sideboard cards. Like, what we're doing is like kind of reasonable in Modern in general, but then when you factor in like people are playing a bunch of cards that just like turn our deck off, suddenly what we're doing looks a lot less reasonable. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Well, Dredge and Reanimator are like fundamentally different things. But I don't think your comparison makes a lot of sense there. I get that they're both graveyard decks, so like at a base level, if you want to be lazy about it, you could say they're both graveyard decks, but that's a pretty lazy take. I mean, to be fair to the opponent, our deck's not really doing anything. So like we're gonna like kill their land here, but we also like aren't executing any kind of game plan. No, they're playing the Orphan Guard. They're playing Elementals. All right, chat. What happens? They draw a second land, or we get to 8 lands. One of these things will happen first. Thanks for the quarter of a year, Lego. Welcome back. Also remember that like my opponent's deck isn't 100% dependent on casting their spells. They have both Solitude and Endurance, and they kept kind of a weak hand. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have one or both of those cards in their hand right now. Well, yeah, like that's why one of the many reasons why Faithless Looting was so good, right? Like with Faithless Looting, you were able to okay, now that's funny. With Faithless Looting, you're able to kind of mitigate that. You needed to draw specific combinations of things, right? Yeah, I think Apophis has the better takeaway there. It's more so that like what our deck is doing when we do pop off doesn't seem to be quite powerful enough to make up for the games where we don't pop off. That was Gaia's Blessing. So Blue Black Mill has become a real deck in this format. So people have been playing things like Gaia's Blessings and Eldrazi Titans in their sideboard to combat that. And again, like this is kind of a textbook example of like, well, I mean, we're a Ponza deck, right? Like we killed a bunch of lands from the opponent, and then like we didn't have any pressure after we did that, so like now they just get to like sit here and draw out of it. No, it's not rogues. It's an actual mill deck. They get to play. You can play 8 mill crabs in modern, and you have fetch lands. Do I have 8 mana producing lands? I'm not actually sure that we do, right? Oh, Blackcleave Cliffs. Yeah, we do. Okay. We do. We do. One of your finest Faithless Salvagings, please. Yeah, I wonder how many Solitudes they have. I would bet more than one since they're flashing this one in. All right. This will be the Endurance that then puts lethal into play. So this set was an excellent example of why this deck just doesn't work. I think at the core, it kind of highlights why destroying lands in Modern is not a particularly good place to be. The reason why traditional Ponza is like somewhat playable in this format is largely due to the fact that Blood Moon gets a lot of people, more so than the fact that like randomly stone raiding and pillaging their mana is good. Just too many people that are able to get under you are able to come back from the fact that you can kill 1 to 2 lands in a game. Archon of Cruelty definitely felt like the powerful thing to be doing. It definitely feels like there could be a Reanimator deck in this format, but if there is, it's not doing something like this that's just too cute and not powerful enough. Yeah, Ponza. The Ponza deck is also a decent rampy deck that like puts dragons or chandras or stuff into play too with some consistency as well for sure. So just destroying lands isn't good. Blood Moon is what normal Ponza is about. This was kind of a good reminder of why I'm being sparing about taking fewer submissions, if I'm being honest too, because like taking decks like this all the time would be kind of miserable. That was rough. All right, let's take a look at the D&D article before we dive on into some Commander for the day, huh?